Dear colleagues, today I'm going to be talking about the links between politics and football, and in particular I'm going to be talking about the links between dictatorships or particular dictators and football. Now, links between politics and football are nothing new. In fact, the geopolitics expert Pascal Boniface gave an absolutely brilliant talk on YouTube recently, and I really would recommend it. It's actually really great interpreting practice material as well. It's entitled La géopolitique du football. And in that talk, he mentions about how football breaks down barriers between nations and peoples. He's obviously a big fan of football himself, and he talks about how in many ways football has made the world a smaller place. It puts countries on the map. Imagine little children in Australia or Namibia or South Africa watching Ronaldo or Messi playing football, for example. It puts countries, it puts teams on the map. But also, football brings countries together. I mean, just look at the Euros or the World Cup. It brings people together and it unites them behind a common cause. But there's more. I mean, football is a great equalizer after all. Football is all about talent, and other considerations pale into insignificance. Pascal Boniface, in his talk, mentions about how Colonel Gaddafi's son was a big fan of football and he tried to sign for one of the big Italian teams. I think it may have been Juventus, but he didn't even get past the selection phase because he simply wasn't good enough. And it didn't matter that his father was one of the richest men in the world or one of the most powerful men in the world. It didn't matter. He simply didn't have the talent to play. So in this way, we see that football is a really great equalizer and anyone can play football. Messi, for example, is one of the tallest players in the world, whereas Madonna was one of the shortest players in the world. So not even stature is important when it comes to football. And then you have the fact that football transcends barriers of language and nationality. It doesn't matter that you can't maybe understand the language of your teammate because football, in a way, creates its own language. But there's another aspect of football that people are often very ready to forget. And this is something that Pascal Boniface did not mention in his talk. And that is the links between dictators and football. And I did a bit of research, and it seems that reports have emerged showing that the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, is a big fan of the English team, Manchester United. Apparently, he tries to get all of the matches broadcast on state television. And he's just one of many, many dictators who have latched on to the so-called beautiful game. It's often claimed that Real Madrid was a team of Franco, the Spanish dictator, and that Real Madrid benefited from preferential treatment from the government. Some even go as far as to say that Real Madrid owes its success to Franco, that it owes its now wealth to Franco. But of course, that is highly contested. It's often thought that Alfredo Di Stefano, who was one of the best players of the time, was transferred to Real Madrid, not to Barcelona, the team he was meant to play for, due to Franco's connivings. And indeed, Real Madrid was actually used as a diplomatic and political tool by the Spanish dictator. In fact, Franco used the club's successes on the European platform to present a very particular idea of Spain. He used the successes of the team to basically show the rest of the world how great Spain was doing under his regime. And of course, Franco's regime actually cared a lot about the way it was perceived by the rest of Europe. And actually, the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, Spanish Minister of Foreign Affairs, said that Real Madrid was, quote, the best ambassador possible of Spain at the time. So Real Madrid was basically a perfect PR tool, if you like, and it helped Franco project an idea of a wealthy, happy, united Spain, which of course was at odds with reality, as the Civil War later showed. But what is beyond doubt is Franco's association with the team Real Madrid and his backing of Real Madrid. And he chose to back Real Madrid because it was the biggest rival of Barcelona, the famous Barcelona football club. And in backing Real Madrid, there was there an implicit criticism and rejection of the Catalan team. At the time, football was actually a way of expressing cultural and linguistic identity, and the Catalans used Barcelona's football club to express a cultural and linguistic identity which was being really repressed under Franco. Catalan was not able to be spoken at all. Catalan culture was severely repressed. Catalans suffered horrendously at the hands of Franco. But the Barcelona Football Club was actually one of the very few places in Spain where people could actually speak Catalan. It was one of the last strongholds, if you like, of this identity which was being so repressed. And actually, there are even stories of Franco's cronies visiting Barcelona's players in the middle of the game. Franco's cronies would often go up to the Barcelona players at halftime and remind them that they were only allowed to play due to, I quote, the generosity of the regime. And this often resulted in Real Madrid winning surprising victories. One of the key matches was a match which Real Madrid won 11-1 against Barcelona. And obviously, not very many people think that Real Madrid actually genuinely would have won by that amount if Franco hadn't had something to do with it. But there's more, because Franco actually forced Barcelona to change its name. He forced the club, obviously not the city, he forced the club to change its name and remove the Catalan flag from its crest. So Real Madrid served as a convenient counterweight, if you like, to Barcelona and to everything the Catalan club stood for. So we've looked at Franco and his support of Real Madrid, but another dictator was even a bigger fan of football, and that was Mussolini. Mussolini used football as a major propaganda tool. He used it as a way of consolidating his power, and the way he did this was actually really fascinating. It's often said that he saw the football stadium as a cathedral, the one place where people united behind a common cause, which goes back to what I was talking about at the start. But what is clear is that Mussolini really recognized the power of football in galvanizing people. As early as the 1920s, when Mussolini came to power, football was growing in popularity. The Italians loved football. But actually, Mussolini remodeled the sport in Italy entirely. Basically, he oversaw a series of reforms which led to the coordination of what previously was a very disjointed administration. And in so doing, he really cemented football's position in the country. But the whole idea behind this was basically to promote Italy's national team. He knew that if Italy did well on the world stage, if Italy did well in the Olympics and the World Cup and the European Cup, it would therefore project an image of Italy as a very important and powerful country. And he thought, quite rightly actually, that this would help internally, that if Italians united behind a common team, they may unite behind something else as well, i.e. him and his regime. But there was also the idea that sporting achievement arouses a certain patriotic spirit and therefore engenders a more nationalistic mentality. For example, Italy applied to host the 1934 World Cup. And following its bid to host the World Cup, which was successful, the country then built various new stadiums. The idea was to, through the construction of these impressive stadiums, demonstrate the industrial might of the fascist regime. However, Mussolini liked micromanaging, and micromanaging, as we know, does not fit well with sport, particularly not with football, because as with any sport, football involves a really high element of chance and luck. Chance and luck play a really key role in any sport, but particularly in football. And that's obviously at odds with the desire to micromanage everything, to control every variable. You just can't do it. But that seemed to have eluded Mussolini's mind. Apparently, Mussolini tried bribing referees. He tried bribing a referee in the Italy-Austria semi-final of the World Cup. And Italy's team went on to win, obviously, but it was the fact that he tried to bribe referees, which really shows the extent to which, or rather the depths to which he wanted to plumb in order to get Italy to win. But nevertheless, Italy's team won various successes. I mean, we could talk about their victories in 1934, 1936, 1938. Italy's team was an incredibly strong team. And most sports historians believe that even without Mussolini's meddling, the Italian national team still would have probably been incredibly successful. But interestingly and quite ironically, a key part of the nation's success was down to the presence of immigrants in the team. This is really ironic given Mussolini's own views on immigration and so-called national purity. He wanted the side to promote pure Italianism, which was at odds with the fact that there were many Argentine-born players in the team. There were reports actually that these players were discriminated against, that they were employed out of necessity to get the Italian team to win, but that they were actually denied special commemorative medals which were given to native Italians. We don't know for sure whether these reports are true or not, but it certainly fits with Mussolini's philosophy. But interestingly, the Italian team was treated and run in an almost military style. There was military style discipline, obedience was demanded at every level. And if the players didn't get on with each other, they would be forced to room together and share dorms. But the coaches also stressed the importance of effort and sacrifice. They stressed the importance of sacrificing oneself to the common good, to the regime, etc., etc. And the team was often seen as a very aggressive side. They were always on the offensive. Their strikers were always going for that extra goal at the last minute of the match. But what's interesting is that those victories did go some way towards uniting people behind a single national cause. But what I find personally fascinating is that even a fascist dictator who controlled a nation's economy, public services, police and army without any hindrance whatsoever needed football to unite people and advance his personal and political cause. I think I am running out of time now, but just briefly, I'm sure everyone's heard of Pele, the amazing Brazilian player. Well, he and his other Brazilian teammates led their country to victory at the 1970 World Cup. But what people don't tend to know is that that moment of triumph and glory was used to cover up the torture, murder, disappearance and other crimes committed by the Brazilian military dictatorship between 1964 and 1984. But the same can be said of countries like Argentina, Uruguay and Chile. Football was used in exactly the same way to cover up these horrific crimes and to promote the image of a regime which was strong and powerful. And actually, the 1978 World Cup in Argentina was nicknamed the Dictators' Cup because it was hosted under a fierce military dictatorship. And the success of the team was actually meant to be a distraction from the crimes of the regime. So that's the end of the first half of the speech. In the second half of the speech, I'm going to be really breaking down the reasons why football attracts or has attracted dictators in the past, and why football has been a convenient tool for dictators. And then after that, I will be talking about an example of actually where football was used to fight back against a repressive regime. So anyway, I hope you found the first half interesting, and I hope my voice wasn't too annoying. And hopefully, yeah, see you for the second half.